Welcome back to the show. So, let's jump right in. Every time chaos erupts, the media seems to have a favorite scapegoat. Why is it that, despite widespread unrest, the blame so often circles right back to Donald Trump? Are we missing a bigger picture here?
That's a classic case of narrative shaping, really. In media studies, we call it agenda setting. By focusing blame on a high-profile figure, it simplifies a complex situation for viewers. But in reality, civil unrest has a ton of moving parts: local grievances, policy decisions, and spontaneous triggers.
Right, but it almost becomes a sport assigning guilt before investigation. I mean, does this let actual perpetrators off the hook? Or is it more about sound bites and political rivalry?
Absolutely. It's the politics of distraction. If you redirect public anger toward a single figure, you avoid a hard look at the underlying causes like economic inequality or failures in city management. Plus, it makes for better ratings, shockingly enough.
Segueing from blame to dollars when unrest damages cities, who should foot the bill? Local officials demand federal reimbursement, especially after military or ICE deployments. Is this fair or just political theater?
That's a hot potato. On one hand, if federal agencies are involved and escalate tensions, arguing for reimbursement isn't wild. But let's not forget many damages arise from protester actions. It's like asking your neighbor to pay for the window you broke during their party.
Ha! Love the party analogy. But there's a legal precedent here, right? FEMA often funds disaster recovery, but civil disorder doesn't automatically trigger a payout. Local accountability still matters, doesn't it?
Exactly. Most insurance and recovery programs require proof the damage wasn't preventable locally. It's a delicate balance: federal support versus local responsibility. And of course, everyone wants someone else's checkbook.
Let's talk about the streets protesters blocking ICE vehicles, chanting, getting physical. Yet, media often paints them as victims, not agitators. Is there a double standard here? Or am I just jaded?
There's definitely a perception gap. It's like the old "look who's calling the kettle black" situation. When protests turn destructive, it blurs the line between civil disobedience and criminality. Coverage then depends on which narrative the outlet prefers.
And the legal gray area doesn't help. Blocking traffic or government vehicles is illegal, but the optics of enforcement cops in riot gear, people screaming "don't kill me," makes for viral content. It's emotional blackmail in some cases.
Exactly. Social media amplifies those moments, sometimes stripping context. The phrase "peaceful protest" can mean anything from a candlelight vigil to a car on fire, depending on your perspective.
Switching gears, I love the story of the Iranian immigrant veteran at the gym. He supports law and order and the president, yet gets told he's not really an immigrant. Why does that shake people up so much?
That's the power of lived experience. When someone who defies the stereotypes speaks up, it threatens the narrative gatekeepers. It's like watching the plot twist in a movie suddenly. The supposed villain is the hero, and vice versa.
And the guy even points out waited years as a refugee, followed the law, and still gets gaslit. Is there data on how common these legal versus illegal immigrant tensions are?
Pew Research reports 77% of legal immigrants support stronger border enforcement. It's often the legal immigrants who are most vocal about fairness because they navigated the system themselves.
Let's dive into the military angle. The gym anecdote touched on the chain of command. The veteran said, "Obey the commander-in-chief." But some argue soldiers should resist orders they see as unjust. Where's the line?
Fascinating debate. Military law actually obligates soldiers to refuse illegal orders, but that's a high bar. Most chain of command disputes happen in the court of public opinion, not the courtroom. Think Abu Ghraib orders were followed, but accountability still followed.
So, if the president orders ICE or the military into cities, opposition often gets framed as insubordination. Yet, historical precedent like the Kent State shootings shows the dangers of blind obedience. How do we balance it?
Education in military ethics is key. The Uniform Code of Military Justice sets clear boundaries, but the chain of command remains fundamental. Soldiers aren't supposed to play politics. That's for the folks in suits.
We're wading into thorny territory, now legal versus illegal immigration. We heard passionate voices saying, "Follow the law or get out." Is it really that simple, or are there nuances we overlook?
It's never simple. The legal process is labyrinthine, wait times can be decades, and quotas are arbitrary. But, as one guest put it, every country enforces borders. Try showing up in Canada without papers and see how fast you're on a plane home.
Yet, there's an emotional pull family separated, kids in limbo. Is there a way to uphold the law and show compassion? Or do we always have to pick a side?
Other countries use point-based systems, humanitarian waivers, or guest worker programs. The US does some of that, but the system's so backlogged it feels arbitrary. Reform is possible, but politics makes it radioactive.
Speaking of other countries, one speaker in the clip said, "Try sneaking into Russia, you'll be gone for 50 years. How do US deportation laws stack up globally?"
The US actually has one of the most generous asylum and due process systems worldwide. In places like Australia, you're detained offshore. France and Belgium deport quietly, no appeals. Only in the US do we see this level of public protest over enforcement.
Is it because of the American dream mythos land of opportunity? Give us your tired and poor? Or is it just better media coverage?
It's both. America's branding has always been unique, but also the scale over 11 million undocumented people makes it a much hotter issue. And yes, social media takes every incident global in seconds.
Let's talk about protest theater. The "let my people go" chants, emotional pleas, people blocking trucks. Are these tactics effective, or do they backfire?
Studies show that emotional appeals can sway public opinion briefly, but sustained policy change usually requires more. When protest crosses into spectacle, it can alienate moderates. Remember Occupy Wall Street? Lots of drama, little legislative impact.
So, is it fair to call it emotional blackmail, or does that minimize real grievances?
It's a balancing act. The civil rights era succeeded because it mixed drama with discipline and clear goals. Today's viral moments can spark dialogue, but without strategy, they fizzle out fast.
We're seeing more people immigrants. Minorities break from the expected political script. When a Mexican American or a black woman speaks out against mainstream narratives, why does it unsettle so many?
That's identity politics in action. People assume group membership equals groupthink. When someone breaks rank, it forces a reckoning. It's like a vegan running a BBQ joint suddenly. Everyone questions their own assumptions.
And those voices often get ignored or attacked, right? It's like their lived experience is inconvenient to the established narrative.
Exactly. It's cognitive dissonance. But the more these voices emerge, the harder it gets to lump people into neat categories. That's real progress, even if it's messy.
Our last segment, nothing says irony like buying an American flag to protest America. What does it mean when protesters embrace national symbols while denouncing the nation itself?
It's almost performance art. The flag has always been a contested symbol. Think of flag-burning cases in the Supreme Court. Using it in protest can be a claim to true patriotism or just a visual contradiction. Either way, it gets people talking.
And yet, you've got immigrants waving the American flag out of pride, while some lifelong citizens use it as a prop for dissent. Is the symbol losing its meaning, or is it evolving?
Symbols adapt with culture. The flag means different things to different people. Sometimes hope, sometimes protest, sometimes both at once. That's the paradox of a free society. You can love and challenge your country simultaneously.
So, after all this, who's truly fighting for America, the flag-waving immigrants, the protesters in the streets, or both? How do we separate authentic conviction from performative outrage?
That's the million-dollar question. Real commitment shows in actions, working, serving, speaking up, regardless of backlash. Performative outrage fades when the cameras turn off. Maybe the real fight is for honest dialogue and mutual respect.
Amen to that. Maybe the answer isn't left or right, but who's willing to have the tough conversations and put in the work? Any last words for our audience?
Stay curious, ask hard questions, and remember the loudest voices aren't always the most sincere. Sometimes the quiet ones waving the flag mean it most. Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for tuning in. Be safe, check in on someone, and until next time, keep questioning everything.